What's up, guys? Hello and welcome back to the Fantasy Playmakers. I've got another piece of content for you today. Today I'm going to be talking about bounce back players for the 2021 season. So I'm going to be talking about guys who really underperformed their draft capital in 2020, and I think these guys are going to have huge bounce back years this year. So the first guy I'm going to be talking about is Ezekiel Elliot on the Cowboys. He was the number 17 running back in points per game in 2020, where he was probably drafted in the top 5 range. So obviously that's not what you want to see from your top 5 pick. If you're getting a guy that early, you're expecting a workhorse who's going to carry you to that championship, a guy who's going to be averaging 20 plus points per game. And Zeke just did not do that. He only averaged 14.9 points per game. But I think Zeke is going to have a big bounce back because you got to look at how he performed when Dak was healthy. In those first 5 games, Zeke averaged 22.34 fantasy points per game. That is top 5 pick production right there. And you're probably going to be able to draft Zeke towards the end of the first round, maybe even start of the second in some leagues if guys are feeling really burnt by him. You just have to look back at his track record. His first 4 years in the NFL, he's averaged 21.7, 20.3, 21.9, and 19.5 PPR points per game. So he's just been a consistent monster throughout his entire career. And I think I'm going to be targeting Zeke a lot this year. If you can get that workhorse guy at the end of the first round, to me, he's a risk that's worth taking for me. And I don't even think he's that big of a risk. I think he's going to get a lot of volume. He's going to get some receiving work. He's going to have Dak back. This offense is going to be on the field a lot. They're going to need to be scoring because that defense is pretty poor. And so that's why I'm liking Zeke going into 2021. The next guy I want to talk about is Julio Jones. And man, people are just leaving Julio Jones behind. He's carried them as a top 3 wide receiver for the past 8 years. And he slips up a little bit. And now he's just thrown to the curb. I do not understand it. He was the number 14 wide receiver in 2020 in points per game, but only the number 52 in total points. So a lot of that is due to his injury. He had a nagging hamstring injury. He only played in 9 games in 2020, and a lot of those games he played in, he was struggling with the hamstring, so it limited his production as well. But guys, he only missed 4 games from 2014 to 2019, and then he gets a bad hamstring injury, which could happen to anyone, and now he's labeled as injury prone. People think he's washed. It just doesn't make sense to me. And he still averaged 16.2 PPR points per game, despite dealing with a hamstring injury, which in my opinion just shows how high the expectations were for Julio. He's being ranked outside of the top 15 receivers in some people's lists, and that's wild to me. If I can get Julio at the end of the 3rd round, I will be buying him there all day. If I go out and I draft 2 running backs in rounds 1 and 2, and then I can get Julio as my wide receiver 1, I would love that. In my opinion, the only thing that could change my mind on Julio this year would be if the Falcons go out and draft a quarterback. So if they go out and they spend that number 4 pick on a guy that I think is going to come in and play right away, they go out, they trade Matt Ryan, they basically go full rebuild mode, then I'll be totally off of Julio because I don't expect a rookie quarterback to support Julio and Calvin Ridley. But with Matt Ryan there, I'm feeling really good about Julio Jones having a big bounce back year in 2021 and proving all those doubters wrong. Now I have Lamar Jackson. He went from being everyone's quarterback 1. He was the top pick in Dynasty Superflex drafts. People thought he had just this crazy potential, and then he kind of flopped in 2020. He was the number 9 in quarterback points per game, which obviously isn't terrible, but when you're being drafted as the number 1 or at lowest probably number 2 quarterback, that's not ideal. He averaged 27.7 points per game in 2019, and that fell to 20.2 in 2020. But he did end the 2020 season on fire, and Lamar Jackson is just too consistent of a runner for me to fade him. He's rushed for 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons, and so with that rushing upside, his ceiling is just too high to overlook for me. So I think if he's falling to quarterback 5, quarterback 6, that's honestly a spot where I'd be comfortable taking him, when normally I don't want to be drafting quarterbacks that high. The last guy I'm going to be talking about today is Melvin Gordon from the Denver Broncos. He finished as the number 25 running back in 2020 points per game. But we have to remember, that was his first year on a new team. He was with the Chargers his whole career. Then he goes to the Broncos, and he does take a little bit of a step back. But the Broncos let Phillip Lindsay walk. Phillip Lindsay had 118 carries for 500 yards last year, so it definitely opens up more carries for Melvin Gordon. Gordon is honestly just a touchdown machine. He's had 8 or more rushing touchdowns in the last 5 years, so super consistent in that aspect. The issue I have here is Drew Lock. If Drew Lock is not the quarterback in 2021, I am going to be all in on Melvin Gordon. And that is because Drew Lock just refuses to throw to the running backs. I don't know what he has against him, but he's just not a fan. Melvin Gordon had 40-plus receptions from 2016 to 2019, but failed to reach that mark in 2020. If the Broncos go out in the draft and they get a guy like Mac Jones or Justin Fields, I will be all in on Melvin Gordon. I think he has easy top 15 running back potential, and he's being ranked as a mid-20s caliber running back. And I think he's definitely better than that and will outperform that and bounce back from a subpar 2020 season. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. Ezekiel Elliot, Julio Jones, Lamar Jackson, Melvin Gordon, all going to have big bounce back years in 2021. Let me know what you guys think about that. Do you agree with these players? Do you have a player in mind that maybe I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments. If you liked the content, liking and subscribing would be huge for me. That would help me out a ton. Thank you guys again. See you next time.